You're live.
Thank you, Robin. Good evening, everyone, and early evening. Today is the school committee meeting, December 2nd, 2021.
Recording in progress.
We are meeting early because we thought there was going to be town meeting, but somehow heroically they ended it last night. So Big does not have an obligation at 6:30 like we had thought. So, but we do have a shortened version tonight. We will make up for it next time on the 16th. That's a very full schedule already. So just enjoy a shorter meeting for a change. And we will get started. We have a consent agenda. I move that we accept the school committee meeting minutes from November 22nd, 2021. Do I have a second for that? Thank you, Stephen. So you're first, and we'll take a vote. Is Helen here yet? No. Stephen?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Where are you, Helen?
I'm here.
There you are. There you are. Helen, how are you voting on the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Jennifer here yet? Not yet. Andy's not here yet. Mariah's out. David?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you. Okay, Claire, you're up next. Doing report. Go right ahead. It's all.
Great. Hello, my name is Claire Gallion, and I am the student representative on school committee. Tonight, I want to talk about how our classes are leveled and our school is divided. Imagine you're about to graduate from 8th grade. You're 13 or 14 years old, and you've barely experienced life. You're excited to start high school, to get a fresh start, to meet new teachers and friends. When it comes time to sign up for classes for 9th grade, you see that most of your teachers have recommended you for standard level classes. Now imagine that through the next 4 years of high school, you struggle to move up and out of standard classes, even if you feel confident in your abilities. When you approach your freshman history teacher about moving to honors in sophomore year, they meet you with hesitancy. You'd be behind, they said. It's harder to move up than down anyways. Even though Brookline High School does not explicitly track students, our system is not designed in a way to let students move up and down from class levels easily. Not only due to prerequisites for classes, but because there are not enough support systems for students who wish to move up in their classes. I've heard from numerous students that when they approach their teachers wishing to move up a level, their teachers would discourage them from doing so, even if they were doing well in the class. Programs like Math Center are fantastic, but limited. What if students can't come before school because they live far away or need to take their siblings to school? They won't be able to receive the support they need. Additionally, at the beginning, you can change your schedule. If you plan on moving up a level, by the end of those 2 weeks, you're already 2 weeks behind in the other class. Due to the lack of mobility between levels, many students in honors or advanced classes, refrain from moving down levels out of fear of getting stuck. There becomes an immense pressure to take as many high-level classes as possible, leaving students in a state of stress. Additionally, many students feel expected to take as many AP classes as possible. We can't ignore the toxic game of AP culture and its role in declining mental health for students. There needs to be concrete action to alleviate student stress, not just encouraging students to sign up for a balanced schedule or to take it easy on themselves. This sort of stress is the same pressure that leads students to keep going to school even when they're sick, because they're scared of getting behind. One day missed leaves students completely behind in numerous classes without much support to catch up. Our school is not just leveled, but divided. It's almost as if there are two schools within BHS, the honors level school and the standard level school. The two groups rarely interact other than electives or health class. What are we doing to bridge this gap? What is the school doing to support students in making healthy decisions for themselves academically? How can we take academic self-esteem into account? Education has been flipped on its head for the past year, and I truly believe that now is the time when we should be taking action to make necessary changes that Brookline students need urgently. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I noticed that Leslie Ryan Miller is not on yet. Certainly she would like, do you have that as a typed up or as a narrative?
I do, yeah. I can
Okay.
Send it to her.
Okay, well, if you send it to Dr. Guillory, he'll probably pass it on to his senior leadership staff, right, Dr. Guillory? That would make sense.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will come up in discussion. Those questions actually have been around for a long time. And I think they have made some progress. I can't really speak for BHS. Maybe Eric can. I don't know. I know you're not on this for that, but I think they've tried to have so everybody's in honors as a ninth grader, or no one's in honors as a ninth grader in social studies. How does that go?
It's unleveled.
It's unleveled. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. So that was a one step, Claire, in addressing some of your concerns. So thank you for that. Any other comments, Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I didn't notice this. What can you just say a bit more about the mechanics of getting in and out of an honors class? Literally, how does it work? How do you register? Do you get recommended?
Yeah, so in my experience, your teachers will put in a recommendation, and then either you agree with their recommendation or you have to override it, which is also can be complicated if your parents, depending on if your parents are strong advocates or not, it can make it harder for you to be in the level that you want to be in. But in general, you sign up for them, but for some classes there are prerequisites that you have to have done before.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated, actually.
I mean, so once you're on a track, you can't really, there's not a lot of mobility because of the prereqs. Like you just can't kind of, like at some point you're just running out of class time.
Yes, and say like you're a junior, if you've been taking, let's say math, for example, if you've been taking honors math all through high school, you can't take the advanced level math when you get to senior year. And it's really hard to move from standard to honors or honors to advanced in math class, throughout high school, because by the time you get there, there really aren't supports in place to help you, even though we have things like Math Center. Just because teachers are so overloaded, it's really hard for them to give you individual attention. And I've heard from a lot of people who took advanced math in freshman year that there's often this sort of sense of trying to weed students out, trying to get the kids who will be there, who will work the hardest or who believe in themselves the most. But I can't speak personally because I've never taken advanced math, but yeah.
Okay, I was actually curious about the other direction, about if you have somebody who comes in and is kind of unmotivated in ninth grade and 10th grade, but then suddenly by the end of 10th grade, it starts to really want to learn and just starts tapping into his or her potential. Can they get tracked differently, or is it just kind of too late at that point?
Well, technically there aren't tracks. So if they,
you know what I mean?
If they want to move up, it is possible for them to.
It's really hard.
But it's just difficult because of the difference in content and rigor in the classes that often they'll feel behind or not feel confident in those classes that they're moving up to.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. Seeing no other comments, we're going to move on. So you're welcome to stay as long as you want, Claire, but it's an early evening. So how about that? Dr. Gilloway, you ready to do your superintendent's report?
I am ready. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Claire, for sharing that perspective on the high school. I've certainly read some of what you shared out and also heard from some other students about that. So we look forward to tackling those issues on behalf of all of our students and families. So this evening's superintendent's report, we're going to actually switch around our spotlight on excellence. We're actually going to begin with that by presentation of our Mass Association of School Superintendents Award. I'll do a round about our school visits that we've been on. I'll talk a little bit about our community engagement, look at our district themes in action, and then share some updates on the COVID vaccine update there. So as I stated, we generally began our student awards at the end of the superintendent's report. However, this evening, we're changing it up a bit and starting with the students first. And one of our awardees has an after-school job, and we don't want him to be late tonight. The Mass Association of Superintendents Excellence Award is designed for high school seniors who have distinguished themselves while at BHS. This award is a highlight of the school committee calendar every year, and it's a privilege to meet some of our most capable and accomplished students. This year, we have 2 BHS seniors who have distinguished themselves with their hard work and perseverance. Both awardees, Rolando Alvarez and Jerry Zhang, have proven themselves to be exceptional members of the BHS community. We are proud that they are BHS warriors, and we're happy to acknowledge their achievements at this evening's meetings. They have demonstrated their academic and civic potential and have shown amazing determination and strength of character. They truly represent the very best of BHS. I would like to thank our BHS colleagues for joining the meeting tonight so that we can learn more about two of our awardees. Guidance Counselor Eric Schiff is here this evening to let us know more about Rolando, and Guidance Counselor Nicole Bent is here this evening to let us know more about Jerry. And we also want to thank Dean Williams for being present as well. So with that, let me turn the microphone over to Mr. Schiff at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. I just want to, before I start reading my remarks, I just want to say that when we discussed students to be nominated for this award, Rolando stuck out to me because over the years, and these have been different years than usual, at least one of his teachers has either come up to me or emailed me or got me on a Zoom to comment about what an amazing and really brilliant, intelligent, hardworking student he was. So it just seemed really fitting to offer him this award considering his story. And when we nominated Rolando Alvarez to receive the Superintendent's Award in Brookline, we were acutely aware that the criteria were that the recipient should be someone who overcame obstacles and has triumphed. This certainly fits Rolando, who has shown great strides in academic classes and as a student who obtained a work permit immediately upon turning 16. Rolando has held a job, sometimes jobs, ever since, even during the pandemic, while doing very well in school and being a source of strength for the family. The defining issues for Rolando's obstacles to success were at home when he was younger. The situation in Rolando's home was a difficult one, and a very unfortunate turn became a second chance at a more normal life for Rolando and his siblings as he moved from that household in Brockton to his father's in Brookline. While the narrative out there surely would be that a move from a district like Brockton to a district like Brookline in Massachusetts would be a huge opportunity for any student, there are certain factors regarding educational options and teen culture that would contradict that. The changes that Rolando experienced have become more of a lengthy cost-benefit analysis rather than an open and shut case of educational mobility. Rolando entered Southeast Technical High School in 9th grade, sights set on a plumbing career, and that path was off to a promising start. Rolando is intelligent, driven, and fastidious in the work and academics, and at Southeast Tech, this was the case in his shop as well. At Southeast, Rolando enjoyed coming to school, especially during shop week, where the lessons were hands-on and elbows deep in practical and pragmatic experience. And while Brookline High School did not have the same draw for Rolando, it is a true testament to Rolando's perseverance and resilience on multiple levels that we stand here today offering this token of respect and recognition to him. The plumbing career is on track because Rolando was able to get his hustle on, but a more complete offering of opportunity would have made the journey to success more complete for him. Rolando has shown many of us what it takes to really broaden our definitions of success. We wish you the best, Rolando, as you take the dignified next step that we as educators in Brookline always hoped and expected you to take. May you continue to aspire and perspire as you have done throughout your years at the high school.
Woohoo, I'm clapping for you.
Thank you, Mr. Schiff. Rolando, would you care to have a few words?
Thanks, Mr. Schiff.
All right, man, you're my guy.
Appreciate you. If it wasn't for this guy, I don't know if this would have been me being nominated.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Rolando. Thank you, Mr. Schiff. Now we're going to move to Ms. Bent so that she can introduce Jerry to us.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, Jerry. Jerry Zhang never fails to impress me. Throughout his time at Brookline High, he has established himself as an outstanding student, but more importantly, an outstanding citizen. I feel lucky to have him on my caseload, and I'm excited to see what lies ahead for this talented senior. When I attended Jerry's IEP meeting his freshman year, I was surprised to realize that I knew his family. I had been Jerry's older siblings' guidance counselor and knew the challenges they had experienced throughout high school. Given the incredibly public nature of this award and the incredibly private nature of Jerry and his family, it would not be fair to share the specific obstacles. That said, given what I knew, I worried that Jerry's path through high school would be a hard one. Apparently, no one told Jerry that. To say that he has been successful at BHS does not feel ceremonious enough. He is killing it. He continues a steady upward trend in increasingly difficult courses, exclusively honors and advanced placement this year, with less and less academic support. That IEP he had freshman year has long been terminated. Jerry internalized so many of the instructional strategies, really stepped up in his self-advocacy, and as you would imagine, success followed. Teachers routinely recognize his good student behaviors. His honors American literature teacher raved, "Jerry, it is clear to me you're a conscientious student and a good self-advocate. You reached out to meet with me about revising your place essay. You worked hard to improve the draft, and it was great to talk with you about your love of basketball." His honors biology teacher shares, "Good work in biology. You have completed all your assignments so far this quarter and are an active participant in breakout rooms, collaborating with your classmates." And his US history teacher adds, "Jerry, you continue to do strong work in history. All of your work has been turned in on time, and you've been engaged in your Zoom classes." Jerry's grades are even more impressive, given that he remained a remote student for the entire year. It was a challenging year that included the death of his grandmother, but you would never know that given his academic performance. Outside of school, Jerry enjoys playing basketball. He's studying Mandarin independently, as he is already fluent in both English and Cantonese. He also took part in a service trip to Japan before the pandemic hit and considers it his most meaningful high school experience. I can only imagine how life-changing that trip must have been. If you are looking for someone that can handle the challenges life throws at you, Jerry Zhang is your man. His good nature, positive attitude, and desire to succeed make him more than deserving of every honor and accolade that come his way.
I'm going crazy, Jerry, as promised. Woo!
Woo, Jerry!
Woo, Rolando! Woo, Jerry! Woo!
Thank you so much, Miss Bent. Jerry, I'm going to pass the mic to you to offer us some remarks.
Yeah, as Bent had said, death of my grandmother and just being remote as a student was really challenging during high school. But I could have done it without any of the staff members. And I mean all staff members that I've interacted throughout last year, this year, and all 4 years of my high school. They've helped me so much and taught me to persevere through all of my hard work and all the hardships I faced. Ms. Bent is the greatest guidance counselor like you can ever ask for. So thank you. And I want to thank my family for just being there for me whenever I need them. And just knowing that I love each and every one of them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those very powerful words, both Jerry and Rolando. And I didn't do my customary piece, but I wanted you all to see your certificates. So Rolando, I believe this one is yours, and these will be sent to you from my office. And here is yours, Jerry. So very, very proud of both of you for your outstanding accomplishments.
Let's go, Rolando. Let's go, Jerry. Woohoo!
All right, Suzanne, I'm going to pass the mic back to you for any committee comments before we continue with the superintendent's report.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to Jerry and Rolando for coming and sharing your stories about the high school and the struggles you've had and how you have overcome them. I do believe BHS has probably prepared you well to go forward out into the world. And so we wish you the very best with that. It's so good to hear your stories. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. I invite you to stay as long as you want, but there's no obligation to stay. I think Rolando perhaps has a job to go to, I'm not sure. And Jerry may have homework, and dinner as well. So Helen, did you have something?
Yeah, just one comment. I want to thank the staff too for your hard work with these students, with all your students, but especially these two students. I mean, it's remarkable what they've said about you, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, I'm giving it back to you, Dr. Guillory, to continue your report.
All right, thank you. So I am now entering, I think, round 3 of our school visits. And so I want to share a little bit more about what actually happens here. So this is, again, I think when I first started talking about these, this is an opportunity for me to spend time, dedicated time each cycle with the building leader, going in, looking at instruction, looking at different aspects of the building, understanding more about their goals and their work, the professional learning that's happening in the buildings. So those are the types of check-ins that I'm doing with leaders very frequently. And learning, again, that's my deep opportunity to continue learning about the system. We also want to thank the Heath community, as the senior team did hold our meeting there Tuesday, and the senior team had an opportunity to tour those facilities. For elements of our theme and action for building relationships, we want to thank, again, our amazing PTO organizations within the system, and a shout out to our leaders. I had the opportunity to meet with them and thank them for their ongoing work within the system, and then acknowledge that PTOs are in the process in various communities of hosting events to show our faculty and staff their gratitude and continuously supporting our educators. So we want to thank them for that. Creating a culture of care, we're beginning to welcome some Afghan refugee families. So our Office of Student Support and Enrollment, along with our Office of ELL, have recently received training to support Afghan refugee families that are moving to Brookline. And we want to also thank the many community organizations within Brookline that are helping families as they resettle to our area. And then as far as eliminating barriers, again, we shared that the Metco team hosted the first HBCU college fair, and 31 of our BHS students were given on-the-spot admissions with college acceptance letters. And then we also just received an update just prior to the meeting that approximately $161,000 in scholarships have also been awarded, and the Metco staff are sorting through how much of that is actually going directly to our BHS seniors. So approximately overall, I think, and the acceptances are still ongoing, so they're also in the process of continuing to review applications. So I anticipate that this number will continue growing for us. For our community engagement, Deputy Superintendent Leslie Ryan Miller hosted Ms. Liepman's second grade class from Pierce here on the 5th floor last week. The students enjoyed story time in the school committee room, so it's being put to good use. And the second graders walked around the 5th floor, meeting lots of staff here as well. It was an honor to join our amazing BHS students, members of the Brookline Police and the Brookline Rotary at the annual Thanksgiving dinner, November 23rd. It was a delicious meal, expertly prepared by our students in their very own new state-of-the-art kitchen there. So it was great to see our students stepping up in a variety of leadership roles there. I had the great pleasure to be invited over to the Ridley School on November 24th and conduct the ceremonial coin toss. And when I tell you this FRR Super Bowl is a big deal, it is a big deal. I was even amazed that one of the students, I think it was on the, is it Indiana? I think it was Indiana, or no, it was Alabama. He decided to defer the receiving of the ball to the second half. So it was, they're really serious about that. So it was a great tradition and a nice start to the Thanksgiving holiday. And while I was not able to attend the boys varsity football team for their exciting Thanksgiving Day victory over their rival Newton North, we want to shout out and congratulate them. The Warriors, of course, won with the score of 38 to 12 over Newton North. So we want to congratulate them for that. Then our last bit of an update here is around our continuing our COVID mitigation strategies. Pool testing, COVID-19 tested has began for our exempt PSB employees that started last week. We continue to host vaccine clinics at schools. And so initially, last time we reported, I think we indicated that both of these events were booked out, but we saw today that there were some openings or cancellations that were made available. So continue to check on those clinics to see if you can get in and get either your second shot or your first shot, or even your booster in this case. And the next round of clinics will be held in January. And then as a note, the overall percentage of fully vaccinated PSB students ages 12 to 18, as of Friday, November 19, we have 89%, an average of 89% of our students in those age groups that are reported fully vaccinated. 7th grade is coming in at 80%, 8th grade is 89%, 9th grade is 92%, 10th and 11th are at 91%, and then our seniors are coming in at 92%. So we want to continue to acknowledge that body of work by all of our employees, but especially to say thank you to our nursing staff and our lead, Tricia Laham, for the work that they are doing there, and certainly to our families for engaging and supporting their children in this. And we also want to continue, and we'll include this in the community update Friday, but to continue our vigilance with the COVID mitigation strategies. As we are returning from the Thanksgiving holidays, we are seeing some upticks in positive cases. I think this past week we reported, I know it was 6 at the high school, but I think across the system, I'll pull it up shortly, but I think it was maybe 20 overall in the system. So that's a higher number than we have been experiencing in the past, because we've been in the low single digits. So this number is similar to what we had right at the beginning of the school year when we came back. So I want to encourage all of our family, our community, our entire community, to continue remaining vigilant with the practices and protocols. And I believe with that, Madam Chair, that concludes the superintendent's report. And we are happy to take any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Linus. Comments, questions, Val?
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. In terms of COVID, obviously wastewater numbers are up, percentages of positivity on tests are up. I'm wondering whether there's any discussion about resuming pool testing for students.
What I haven't heard that specifically, and right now Tricia Laham unfortunately has had an accident and she's out of pocket for a little while. When she comes back, we're definitely going to check in on that because I'm thinking about that question as well as the new variant that's on the horizon to think about what else we can do to be more proactive there. So it's on our radar, but we will come back to you with more specifics there.
Thank you.
Yes, Helen.
So panel 4 is continuing to meet, right?
I believe it's
So-
once a month.
And have once a month now. Have
Yeah.
they weighed in on any of these things yet or no? Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Guillory, for your report.
Thank you all.
We're now moving on to the presentation on the update on the social emotional learning, I think the survey, and I'll hand it over to Casey, and then I would guess you're handing it over to others. So thank you, Casey.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Suzanne. So I'm going to kick it off actually to Matt now.
Awesome. Great. Can folks see my screen? Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for having me join you all this evening. As you just alluded to, we want to provide a summary of our fall universal screening data. And we think this provides a really helpful context for understanding what kids are experiencing right now. That's really helpful information as we're thinking about supporting students moving forward. Before presenting those data, we do want to sort of anchor the conversation with a couple of important ideas around mental health. We're in a place right now where obviously more kids and more adults are feeling more challenging emotions. And so we sort of have this opportunity right now to sort of shape or potentially sort of reshape the conversations that we're having with kids around mental health. A really important thing that we want kids to understand is that positive mental health does not mean the complete absence of challenging emotions. We also don't want kids to sort of think that in order to be mentally healthy, you have to always be experiencing positive feelings. Within this space, it's really important that we're sort of anchoring for children this understanding that you can be mentally healthy and regularly experience challenging emotions. Broadly, we know that it's sort of unavoidable to experience stress and other sort of big challenging feelings. And there's actually a lot of evidence that stress is actually really good for performance at moderate levels and can actually help facilitate growth. And so as we're talking with children, we really want them to understand that positive mental health is indicated when you have a feeling that sort of matches the situation that you're in, both in terms of intensity, so how big that feeling is, and in duration, so how long it lasts for. And then they're able to sort of manage that feeling to meet the demands of whatever moment that you're in. So for example, if you're in a challenging situation, it totally makes sense to have a challenging feeling. And then the goal is to regulate that emotion to effectively meet the demands or to have success in whatever situation that you're in. We want kids to sort of differentiate between those normative experiences of stress and other challenging emotions from what we sort of describe as distress or bad levels of stress, which we can sort of define as this sort of chronic, never ending, I sort of can't get away from it level of stress, or a level of challenging feelings that sort of outpace or overwhelm the coping resources that you have. Oftentimes that's what we're sort of thinking about with the trauma. In this moment, we obviously really want to focus on kids who are experiencing distress and offer additional supports. But we really want kids to sort of stay away from a place where they're thinking that they need to prevent challenging emotions, because that's really, really unhealthy. And we want kids hanging out in a space where they're really focusing on emotional regulation to sort of increase their ability to feel a big thing and can continue to work toward their goals. And for us as adults, as we're thinking about supporting children and adults within this context, it's really important that we're anchoring those supports within this lens of sort of the dual factor model of mental health. And so in this frame, we're not only interested in sort of minimizing the amount of distress that people are experiencing, but we also want to maximize and increase the availability of protective and positive experiences. We know that when a person experiences distress, these protective factors like supportive relationships can do a really good job at mitigating or reducing the impact of that stress on their functioning. So as an example of that, we know that high levels of worry have a lower impact on your overall functioning if it happens within the context of supportive relationships. In the absence of those relationships, that's where that worry can really impact your functioning. What I also want to offer here before we take a look at the screening data is that we're sort of learning and we sort of understand that when students complete the survey, heavily influences their responses. And so what I mean by that, for example, we've observed that kids will typically endorse the highest level of challenging feelings in the winter. That's a pretty common finding within New England. We also know that kids typically endorse their lowest levels of school belonging in their safe adults in the fall, and those numbers typically increase as the year goes. So in these data, I'm going to be sort of comparing how kids are doing now relative to where they were a year ago, so fall 2020. And as we take a look at these data, I want to sort of offer some sort of higher level overall findings. So we know relative to last year, we have significantly more children who are able to identify a safe adult at school. We also have some students, and I'll talk about this a little bit in a second, that's why the asterisk is there. We have some students who are reporting higher levels of school belonging. When you look at kids' emotional experiences, we're seeing relative to fall 2020, more students are reporting to regularly experiencing worry. In our elementary and middle school, we have more students who are regularly experiencing positive emotions. However, in our high school, particularly in 11th and 12th grade, we are seeing decreases in positive feelings. So I'm going to dig into each of those a little bit more in these slides. And so as we're thinking about the protective factors that are really important for children, we know that having a safe adult at school is the most robust sort of important protective factors that a child can have. And so relative to where we were last year, we have so many more kids who are able to identify a safe adult. Now, I'll offer is that obviously the structure of last year was not super conducive for those relationships being established. And obviously the structure this year is more helpful, but the structure itself doesn't create those relationships. These relationships are caused by the amount of time and effort and love that educators have devoted to working with students, right? So we just had a great example, right, of Nicole Bent working really hard with the student, right? So this is really, really important, particularly when we're in a place where we still have kids experiencing a lot of challenging emotions. This was a finding that was pretty consistent last year as well, that we have more kids in special education, students in MECO, students in STEPS who are able to identify a safe adult. We generally account for that finding and that we know that an active ingredient in those supports are adults offering a lot of support and a lot of attention to students, and that really helps facilitate those relationships. We did have a finding in grades 3 through 5 that students who were English learners were slightly less likely able to identify a safe adult. My hypothesis there is that a lot of those students are new to their buildings. And so we're going to continue to monitor that in the winter and spring, but my guess is that as the year goes, that finding is going to sort of normalize itself. Related to that is we ask kids about their overall level of school belonging. And we measure school belonging with questions like, do you feel like you're understood at school? Do you feel like you matter? Do you feel like adults care about you? And as we're thinking about school belonging, we can sort of think of it along a 5-point scale, with sort of 5 being the highest level of school belonging. And so when I describe favorable school belonging here, that is a 3.5 out of 5 on that scale. And so here we see the percentage of students who have that favorable level of school belonging. Unfortunately, and this is a finding that we observed last year as well, is that we are noting significant differences in school belonging based on race and ethnicity. So students who are African American and Black, students who are Latinx, and students who are Asian are endorsing lower levels of school belonging than students who are white. We're also noticing differences in school belonging for students who participate in MECO, in STEPS to Success, students who are English learners, and for students who are in special education. And so as we're really focusing on our equity work, this is something that we're taking very seriously, because we know how critically important it is for all of our kids to feel like they belong in every single educational environment that they're in. When we look at having a friend at school, so we ask kids, do you have at least one peer to go to at school if you're having a challenge? We see the vast majority of our kids are able to identify a friend at school. And we see sort of this noticeable increase for our students in grades 3 to 5, and sort of similar levels in our middle school and high school. As we move into kids' emotional experiences, we're sort of observing throughout the country that more kids are experiencing higher levels of challenging feelings, and that's sort of playing out here as well. And sort of the emotional experience that a lot of educators are noting are increases in worry and stress and anxiety. And so here I'm presenting data on kids who are reporting to regularly experiencing worry. And we're defining that as kids who sometimes, frequently, or almost always experience worry. Now, I want to offer that sometimes experiencing worry is not an issue. That's probably a healthy amount of worry. But we do have evidence that as kids are developing, they're sort of learning emotional identification skills. And so there are some kids who may be underreporting their experiences of worry. So there's some kids who are in that sometimes bucket who might actually be in the frequently or almost always area in terms of their worry. And so here, if we sort of focus in on the percentage of kids who are almost always or frequently experiencing worry, and that's probably a level of worry that has the ability to interfere with sort of aspects of their functioning. We see that number at 13% in grades 3 through 5. In 6th and 7th grades at 23%, 29% in 8th grade, and then it's 41% for our high schoolers. In our earliest grades, there wasn't much of a difference for 4th and 5th graders. Sort of the most noticeable jump there was for our 3rd grade students. Here you're seeing the percentage of kids who are endorsing regularly experiencing those emotions. In grades 3 through 5, it was relatively similar to where kids were at this point last year. In middle school, we had slightly more kids reporting that they're feeling angry and sad. And in the high school, we have a lot more kids who are reporting to feeling sad, lonely, angry, and frustrated. And then finally, with kids' positive feelings, we see in grades 3 through 5, we're seeing these pretty noticeable increases in kids regularly feeling excited. We also have some increases in kids feeling happy. In our middle school, we also have some increases with students feeling excited and students feeling loved. Unfortunately, in the high school, and particularly in 11th and 12th grade, we're seeing decreases in kids feeling happy, hopeful, and feeling loved. And so in terms of our immediate response, as part of the survey, we asked students if they want an adult to follow up with them after the survey. We had about 10% of students say yes to that question. That's that raised hand question there. And so we're still in the process of our school counselors and our adjustment counselors and school psychologists and other support staff following up with students to check in with them to see what they might need. We also prioritize students who are not able to identify a safe adult and students who are not able to identify a friend at school, and really sort of making available for those students experiences that are going to help support those relationships. And then our adjustment counselors and our psychologists and our school counselors are following up with and checking in with students who endorsed a high level of challenging feelings on the survey, and also who had few protective factors. As we're thinking around our next steps and sort of responding to this moment, we know very deeply that we're in a place right now where, of course, kids are really struggling. But we also know that educators are really, really stressed. We know that caregivers are also really, really stressed. And so it's really important that we're coming at this with a whole community approach. As we're thinking about that, we really want to make sure that every single person in our community has increased access to those positive and protective experiences. And a lot of that focus is around having consistent access to positive relationships and positive learning and working environments. We're also going to continue to provide resources directly to staff. In a moment, I'll bring up a couple of resources that we're going to make available to educators to support their wellness. And also, we've designed a website that is for caregivers. And within that website, there's a lot of resources, including a monthly newsletter that's giving caregivers a lot of resources and information about things that they can do at home to support their children. I'll pause there. I imagine folks will likely have some questions.
Suzanne, you're muted, I think.
I'm
But
so sorry, so sorry. That
that's
wasn't.
okay, but I was trying to read. Were you calling on me?
I thought you raised your hand, but you raised your hand because I was on mute, I think. Did you raise your hand?
Well, yes, I did.
Okay, go ahead, Jennifer.
Actually, so Matt, thank you so much for this information. It's really interesting to see. And the things that I was writing down that I had questions about, you sort of answered as we went. So it eliminated some of my questions. So thank you for that. It was really helpful to sort of see what was, how we were prioritizing students that we were, really concerned about, student groups. And then I was sort of wondering what the thinking was about why some of the numbers changed, and you sort of addressed that as we went. So you sort of eliminated a number of my questions as we went, which is great. It's really, I really wanted to just sort of point out the increase in the number of students who feel that they can identify a safe adult. That's something I feel like we've been talking a lot over the last few years, and really this idea of sort of trying to match students with safe adults if they don't have them. And sort of this, I feel like in the past we've talked about, in a way, sort of like a mentor type relationship, an adult who checks in. And so I think we're seeing some results of that. It was really nice to see that go up. And I suspect that some of this data has changed since last year, as many of our RLA students come back into the buildings and can build those friendships. But I'm really glad there is, we don't have all of our students at 100, we're not at 100%. So it's really nice to see sort of like the prioritization of, some of our most at-risk students or potentially at-risk students to target them. To make sure that they have a friendship connection, a peer connection, but also a safe adult connection is so important. Children spend so much time at school during the day. So it's really important. So I just wanted to thank you for sharing this information.
And one thing I'll offer too, and it's really powerful experience as I go into schools and as I share out these data, is how much it matters to adults to be identified as a safe adult. And with sort of this beautiful thing is, as we share out these, we sort of call them these safe adult lists, where we're sort of identifying kids who are not able to identify a safe adult, and how seriously adults take those lists of wanting to be that person that a kid can go to. And they're really relentless in it. So it's just this beautiful thing that we just have so many people working so hard on because they know how important it is.
Yeah, I just hope that we, as a follow-up to that, and keep encouraging kids to let us know in a way that feels comfortable to them when they don't feel that they have a person that they can talk to at school, or that they feel that they don't have someone to a peer that they can eat lunch with, or someone to be someone to hang out with at recess or those down times. I know, like at Lawrence, they had a friendship bench. I don't know if all schools have that, but just a place for kids to go where they can sort of be like, I'm looking for someone to hang out with. I just think it's so important that they feel those connections, even more pressing coming out of this pandemic or within this pandemic. So I appreciate those efforts.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Helen, and then Stephen. Helen?
Matt and Casey, I want to thank you and all the staff who have really done immense work since September, really trying to help kids to readjust to our new normal and to help staff. It's been great. I had a couple of questions. One, this SEL questionnaire that we've done, you were comparing it to 2020, correct? But do we have any baseline pre-pandemic?
A little bit at the high school level and a little bit in the 8th grade. It would be awesome if we sort of had a complete comparison.
Yeah.
And so, like, one thing I am able to offer when you look at the safe adult numbers, I know when we compare them to the high school and sort of in 8th grade, they're sort of approaching to where we were prior to the pandemic. They may be sort of a couple percentage points lower. But I think within a context where kids are experiencing a lot of challenging emotions, I think that's pretty impressive that we're pretty close there to where we were prior to the pandemic starting.
And that they hadn't been together with those adults last year to form those relationships. So it's sort of normal that there would be less to begin with, at least. It'll be interesting to see what happens. You're doing this again at the end of the year.
Yep. So we'll do it again right around the midpoint of the year, so the end of January, early February. Then we do it again at the end of April. So we'll sort of have those 3 time points to see how those numbers change over time.
Great. The other thing that I found interesting is that if I understand the numbers right, about 700 kids raised their hand that they wanted more attention, which is
with this it's grades 3 through 12, so it's a slightly smaller number than that. But yeah, so it's hundreds of students who raised their hands, and that those are hundreds
which is
of kids.
impressive.
It is. Yep.
That they're able to do that kind of self-care and realize that they can use more help, because that's not usual for kids.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, we know that there are some kids that are really comfortable popping to the school counselor's office and saying, hey, I need something. And there are other kids that really sort of need that gentle push to do that. And so that's why we sort of have that question in there, to make sure that all kids are having an opportunity to let an adult know that they need something.
That's very smart to have. That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Yes, Stephen?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. That was really informative. A couple of questions. First, I think most of the people in this meeting were anticipating some of the SEL issues that your survey showed have gotten worse, and one of our responses was to try to increase staffing at the schools to mitigate those SEL issues. So I have 2 questions about that. One is, who are the safe adults? Is there any indication that the additional staffing are among those safe adults are playing the role that we were hoping them to? I'll stop there for now.
Awesome question. Yeah, so it's this really powerful experience for me. So I see all the names of adults who are identified as a safe adult. And so probably the most common responses to that are people who are in support places, right? So our adjustment counselors were named a ton, our school counselors were named a ton, our school psychologists were named a ton. There are a lot of classroom teachers that are also being named, but a lot of kids who regularly access their school counselor or access an adjustment counselor or access a psychologist are naming that person as their safe adult or one of their safe adults.
So is that an indicator to you that the increased staffing is paying dividends, or is it just too difficult?
Yeah, I think that'd be one of our indicators. I think it definitely communicates that that's a really powerful relationship for them, right? But I think when we overall sort of think about clinical services, we also want to support engagement in instruction. So that will sort of have that revealed over time. But as a foundational thing that we would want to check off is that that's a really supportive relationship. That piece is in place, and then we need to monitor as the year goes on to see how it impacts engagement.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, I think we've talked about this once before with you. It was my understanding that it was difficult for students to access counselors via walk-ins because a lot of the counselors were really overscheduled. Has the changes in staffing or any other changes been able to peel back that? First of all, would you validate that that's a problem, or would you say that that's just anecdotal? And if it is in fact a problem, has any of these staffing changes begun to improve the situation?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how widespread of a problem that is. I can offer that, our school counselors are very busy. Our adjustment counselors are very busy, so they are supporting a lot of students. But I'm not sure how much of an issue it is with kids not being able to.
Specifically, what I heard a lot from students was that counselors were busy with non-student facing tasks, like they were, for instance, talking about how they were burdened by school scheduling, for instance. So I'm wondering if any of those responsibilities have been peeled away from those with student support roles.
Yeah. So what I guess sort of a lens that I do have is sort of based on the number of kids who our adjustment counselors are seeing. Right. I think at this point, our adjustment counselors have supported around 200 students. And so I think in years past, those may have been students that would sort of drop by a school counselor's office. And so I anticipate that, yeah, so having an additional clinician in each building has sort of helped with that thing that you're sort of talking about.
Okay. I guess all I'm trying to ask is, do you think it's a reasonable conclusion to draw that the staffing change as an intervention was was wise? Like, did it seem to have been a good investment by the district? Can we draw any conclusions about it, recognizing that we're only a few months into the new school year?
Yeah, I would
Or would you
say
just discuss with us?
yeah, so I would say, you know, when you're in buildings and you talk to any adult, the thing that I brought up to the most when people approach me is thank you for these additional adjustment counselors. We have no idea how we'd be doing this work this year if not for these additional folks that are in place.
Okay, I think that's really valuable feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
I do want to add, Stephen, to your point or to your question too, is that it did free up the school counselor's workload, but that filled up pretty quickly. So the clinicians in our buildings, especially this year, the data that Matt showed obviously is it filled their caseloads. So folks across the board are pretty full.
Well, I mean, my feeling is if it filled up their caseloads pretty quickly, that's a good sign. That means that slack was taken by exactly what we want them to be doing. So thank you. I find that very valuable feedback.
Yeah, Val?
Thanks for the presentation, Matt. So a question on the worry, the anxiety points that you raised, and with the students you're intervening with, are you seeing any trends in what the worry is about? Is it what you would have presumed to have seen pre-pandemic? Is it the pandemic? Is it what are you seeing in terms of those students who are having that outsized worry?
Awesome question. So I think this the levels of worry are sort of what I was anticipating. And part of that was just sort of observing sort of some national data and sort of seeing those increases in worry. So definitely aligned with that. And I would say that the worry, there's sort of an expanse of things that kids are worrying about, right? So if you ask a high schooler, they're going to name school is a thing that I'm worrying about, right? If you ask our 12th graders, it's about, you know, getting into college. But it's sort of ranging, you know, so kids have a lot of things that are going on at home. There's a lot of stressors sort of related to the pandemic that are still going on for lots of children. So sort of a wide range of things that kids are very justifiably worried about within this moment.
Thank you.
So I was struck by a couple of things, but one thing I was struck, Matt, was that students can have many feelings at the same time. So it's and both. So there's a high percentage of, like, I think grades 3 to 5 students who were happy at school, and yet there's a good number who were worried. And so it seems to me they have to be the same kids, some of them, because they overlapped. And so how do we help the kids? Do we think of SEL as we think about academics? Like, do we think about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 kind of interventions, and where are we with that, you know, in the district?
Yep. So you're spot on. So we want to think about social and emotional skills in the exact same way as academic skills, right? So we use that exact MTSS model. So we have a lot of classroom-based work that's being done to make sure that all kids are getting access to experiences that are going to support their social and emotional learning. As an example of that, just about every single one of our school counselors in the K-8 push into classrooms and lead weekly SEL lessons. And then we have a lot of classroom teachers who are really embedding this work into their routines and practices within the classroom. And then as we think about sort of tier 2, we have a lot of therapeutic groups that are going on in our K-8s that are really targeted based on the universal screening data. Then obviously kids who need individualized supports, we provide those as well. But that exact same model as we'd be thinking about academic skills absolutely applies to social and emotional skills.
Did we land on one curriculum for SEL in a classroom, or are we using a number of different?
Yeah, so we're definitely not in the place yet where we have identified one curriculum to use across the district. Where we're in a place now is that we just sort of have clinicians and teachers sort of identifying what makes sense for them. When we've done sort of analysis, there are a couple of evidence-based curriculum that folks are using, but we don't have one that we're using across the district.
So I guess if you had a lot of extra time, which I'm sure you don't, it would be interesting to take a look at which classrooms are using what approaches.
Yep.
And if there's a correlation then with the results from the survey.
Yep, and what's nice is we have a pretty good understanding of sort of where some of this curriculum work is happening. Just as an example, BEEP is using Second Step throughout their entire program, right? And so we're going to be able to do some important data work to sort of look at the impact of that type of support for kids.
Yeah, in your spare time. Jennifer.
Just as a follow-up to that, could you give us like just a brief sort of summary update of where that SEL curriculum work is at? I know that there was the beginning of some sort of some version of piloting some curriculum and some working group, maybe. I don't know if that's the right title, or a group of people who are working on, sort of maybe evaluating or analyzing some possibilities for us, and not. I know it's sort of tier one, but it was more skill-based versus like sort of like a holistic thing. So where is that work at right now?
Yeah, so it's ongoing, right? So what that looks like is me meeting pretty regular. So the main pockets where it's happening. So MECO is using it, STEP's using it, BEEP is using it. So I regularly meet with them. We're actually in this really interesting place right now where we typically know that fidelity will start off sort of high. And then as we get deeper into the school year, as there's competing demands, it can get harder. And so I actually have some meetings scheduled in the next couple of weeks to see where we're at in terms of implementation. If we sort of maintain high levels during this period, that's a really good sign. And then if we don't, we sort of problem solve for it. But part of, as we're really sort of thinking about implementation, is sort of looking at the arc of it throughout the entire year. And it's also, there's multiple units. And so getting people's experiences with each of those units is going to be important as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt. Other questions, comments, thoughts? Yeah. Were you going to add then something about resources for our staff?
Yep.
Yeah, so thank you for doing that. I think I brought that up last time, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share my screen again. And so we're going to have many resources that are going to come out to staff in the coming weeks. As an example, that we offer a weekly newsletter, and for the foreseeable future, we're really going to focus on adult wellness. But this is a document that went out to all staff at the beginning of last week. And within this document, we're really naming for staff how important in this moment it is to be prioritizing kid and adult wellness. What we know happens a lot is that educators will feel that this tension between supporting academic learning and supporting social and emotional learning. And we really want to sort of anchor for staff that in order for kids to access instruction, they need to be psychologically and emotionally available. So when you create space for social emotional learning, that's what ensures that, right? And so it's really important in this moment that we're very much intentionally and feeling okay about dedicating time and space to do that. Then a second thing I'll show here is, so this is a website that we've designed for families. And so as part of that, we have a monthly newsletter that's sort of anchored around different aspects of SEL. And within this, we give some resources and very specific and concrete activities that folks can do at home with their children.
And could you just speak for a minute about our public mental health group here in town? Do they interact with the school personnel?
With the Brookline Center?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And so we do. And we actually I have some meetings scheduled soon at the Brookline Center. There's actually a pretty heavy interest in some collaboration, and actually even potentially using some of these data to help structure some of the therapeutic groups that they're offering students. So we know that's a really, really important resource. So we work with them pretty closely.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Okay, thank you so much. I know how important this work is.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Okay. We are moving along to some of our action items. Dr. Guillory, did you want to do the calendar, the school calendar?
Yes, ma'am. So the question is, and we're happy to do it either way. You have both, you have 2 years worth of calendars in your folder. And I'm happy to share screen if you'd like to see them and talk through them. That I'm thinking ahead now. So Aaron, if you'll share, pull that up for us. So this is draft 1 for next school year. And so in each of the cases, we gave you 2 drafts. Now, what I'll say is that both sets of these drafts are presently shared with the BEU, and they are also in the process of reviewing them. So we just wanted the committee to take a look at them so that we would be on track with approving our calendars in a timely fashion. So in both of our 22-23 calendars, students would start on the 6th, on September 6th. The difference in the 2 versions that we shared with you is that teachers would either start on September 1 or either start on 8/31. That's the difference in the 22-23 calendars. And also, if you take a look at November, and this is the same in both of the calendars, November 11th is the state election. And so 6 of our school buildings are polling locations. So we are certainly recommending that we close school for that at that moment and use that as a professional development day. And of course, the last day of school is the same in both drafts of the calendar. So the big difference in the 22-23 calendars are when the teachers actually report. And so we, if we bring teachers back prior to September 1, the BEU needs to weigh in that they're willing to do that. Otherwise, the calendars are the same in that regard.
Dr. Guillory,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think you meant November 8th is the election.
Yes.
date.
What did I say?
You said the 11th. That's okay.
Okay.
That's
You're
better.
exactly right. Yep. November 8th. All right.
Okay, do you need us to vote on anything or?
Not tonight.
Or just a first reading?
Just the
Okay,
first read.
got it.
And so then, Aaron, if you'll pull up one of the draft 1 for the 23-24 calendar.
You know, Suzanne, if I could just a minute. One of the things I actually checked in with Robin about why Asian Lunar New Year was not on the calendar as a holiday, but it comes out on Sunday, both this year, this coming 2022 and 2023, which was interesting.
So for yep, that's an excellent point there, Helen. So for the 23-24 calendars, draft 1 and draft 2, again, start dates for teachers would be different in the 2 versions. And this one also has a difference in when the students start. So in draft 1, which is on your screen, if we start on, if the teachers come back on September 5th to have those 2 work days, our students would start on the 7th, which means that school would end on the 20th of June, which is after, which is again, sort of an interrupted week, that week where you have 2 days in, then you have a holiday, then you have the last day of school after the holiday. The draft 2 would bring the teachers back on the 30th and 31st of August. It would have school starting on September 5th. And then our last day of school would be June 17th. So those are, the big differences between the 2 calendars. And so we'll await the BEU's response on whether their membership is amenable to coming back prior to September 1, as it's stipulated in the contract that their approval is required to start back prior to September 1 with their staff, with the teachers. And then we'll get that feedback, and then hopefully by our next meeting, we can bring these back for your vote. I believe their executive council is set to meet Monday. All right. I think that's.
I think I think David has a comment or question. David?
Yes, I'm just wondering, could you review sort of the pros and cons of starting that one day earlier versus going with September 1st?
On this particular version, David, or the?
Yes.
So in looking at the calendar, starting, if the teachers were to come back in August, the last 2 days of August, that means that Friday would be open, and then we would have, let me look at them separately because I'm looking at them together. Our students would start back after the holiday, so they would have a full, essentially 4 days back in session. And that would have us ending June 17th, which comes back, if you can circle that. Oh, you're looking at draft one. Never mind. So June 17th, we can circle it there. That's fine. Would be just coming back the Monday after a holiday. Whereas in draft one, it's the students would have Labor Day off, then the Tuesday, Wednesday, then starting Thursday, they would have 2 days in. Then the end of the school session would be a little bit more, would be choppier those last 3 days. So I think the solid start at the beginning would be what I would be more inclined to, rather than having the choppiness there. But we'll see what feedback they have as well.
Other thoughts, comments? Susan.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you for these. Just 2 other thoughts. One is I also noticed the Lunar New Year issue, and I'm wondering if it would be possible to list it at the bottom, just as January 22nd, so that it's clear to people that we didn't forget it for either of the 2 years. I think that's important for visibility purposes and just that it was on our radar screen. The second question is, we know that a lot of students at the last week of June have summer jobs or they have summer commitments that start that last week. And so especially in this calendar that starts Monday, the week of the 24th, if it's the 20th without any snow days, the likelihood that we'll be going into that following week is high unless we're gonna meaningfully change our approach to snow days at this point. And so I would just want us to be quite mindful of that and prevent it, because we obviously don't want kids missing school, but we also are mindful that they have other commitments, particularly that last week. So if we did end up going with a calendar that was a Thursday that ended on the 20th, that we at least have a conversation about trying to prevent. We don't want to cancel snow days entirely, but even so, that gives us 2 to work with. But not sort of go to 6 that year or something like that. Just something to think about, because we know that we get a lot of pushback. We also get pushback about buildings being too hot to learn in, and there's a lot of understandable teacher and student and family concern about being in buildings that much later into the year. So at any rate, there are I understand exactly what you're saying about the beginning of the year and the choppiness to avoid. So I appreciate there's not necessarily a good answer. I just want to make sure that we talk through the implications for the end of the year as well. So thank you for these. Thank you for trying to navigate these.
Thank you, Susan. Jennifer?
I just wanted to add on to I think one of the important reasons to make sure we put the Lunar New Year holiday on the calendar is so that teachers are aware for the purposes of assignments and homework, so that it's just on the radar, so that students aren't getting assigned major projects or things that are maybe signed over that weekend.
Yeah, Helen?
Just one quick comment. Thank you so much for putting out 2 years. I think it really is helpful to parents and to teachers too, to know what to expect. And this way, from now on, we can do 1 year at a time, because we always have that extra year already there. So thank you.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, thank you all for that feedback. So we'll update and hopefully bring it back to the next meeting.
Great. And Now, Mariah's out. Sam, are you going to take up the budget development calendar with possible vote or?
Correct. I
Okay,
will do
great.
that. Then Superintendent Guillory will take on the guidelines afterward. Thank you. So what you see before you since we last spoke, the only change I'm aware of, and it's really a change that's driven by the town, is when you get into December, and I'll note this, I'm noting it now, but we'll note it assuming you vote this tonight, is where you see the 7th of December for a select board meeting, you know, the two bullets way on the right, that has been delayed to the 14th. And so just so you know, that's delayed to the 14th. Other than that, there are no changes. The dates you see and the important dates up the top are you know, nothing has changed in that regard. But did want to note the one change from the 7th to the 14th.
And do we know why that was changed?
I think the town honestly, I'm talking to Melissa Goff because I did talk with her the day after Thanksgiving to go over, and this will dovetail into superintendent's guidelines being now a 5-year set, is Melissa and I talked about, Melissa being the deputy town administrator, for those who don't know. We talked about model for a 5-year budget projection. And as part of that conversation, she had mentioned, because I dovetailed back to the 7th, and when we were putting together our top, I call the top line number, our total request for the 15th to Finance Subcommittee. And she had said that, you know, when we might get a number that we would know what the town is looking to give us by Mel Kleckner. And that's when I heard the 7th, they wouldn't be ready, and it was being pushed back to the 14th.
Sam, can we, is there anything down below after December? Can you?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so this was all the same that we had.
Correct. The only changes, as I've noted.
Okay. Okay, do we need a vote on this? This is our second reading. Yeah. Somebody on the Finance Committee want to move to accept this?
I'll move it.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. Do we have a second? I can't see. Can I,
I'll second it.
Thank you, Susan. So now I can see everybody now. Any other conversation questions before we vote? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. Helen?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you. Okay, for the guidelines, Dr. Guillory is going to take that? The budget development guidelines?
Yes, that's me.
Okay.
So what we did here, and thank you to Mariah for capturing the notes and then reconfiguring this. As Sam shared, that the city is looking to do sort of 5-year budget projections. And I think in the conversation that we had at last point was to look at, think about our guidelines as not discrete entities, but sort of look at our guidelines that will cover us for a period of time. So I think the more significant adjustments that we were made. So here are the guidelines 1 through 5, ensuring equitable access to curriculum and services for all students. I won't read it to you, you have it all there. Build a budget reserve to meet the funding needs and contingencies. Number 3 is support the priorities of teaching and learning, including curriculum, program support, and educator development. Making sure that our resources are available to support post-pandemic and then improving the life cycle of a PSB employee. And then what we attempted to do in the second part was call out specific examples and note which guidelines those examples are tied to. Again, and it's not, and we're highlighting, we're calling out some high level ones, but what I don't want this to inadvertently do is turn into a laundry list of things. Because when we get into our strategic plan, these pieces or parts will become more evident. So again, in our gap year, we're noting some of the specific examples tied back to those particular guidelines. And the last one, so these are essentially the same as what I believe you had last time, and I apologize because I accepted the changes on Mariah's, the red line addition that she made. But the last one was to engage in the strategic planning process. I wanted to specifically call that out because that is a large undertaking that the district will be engaged in. And so I do think that's worthy of calling out. And so these are the guidelines that were shared previously with these parts sort of denoted out. And so with that, we can entertain any questions that you all may have on them.
Yeah, Val.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. On number 4, the social emotional learning and the academic supports post-pandemic or during pandemic, does that mean finding resources to continue the adjustment counselors that we currently have and things like universal summer program? What can you speak more to what number 4?
So yeah, so what number 4?
What's envisioned with 4?
4 speaks, or what we're envisioning there are the resources that we have. So what I heard the committee say was that we are committed to continuing those the supports that we have in the adjustment counselors, those aspects. And then what we will also do in terms of summer school or summer programming, we want to be thoughtful about the opportunities that we offer in the summer. So we as a senior team have backed away from using the term universal summer, but we will have opportunities that are available. I think some of the larger issues that we ran into with summer school, the universal summer program last year, we want to just be thoughtful about how we engage in the various opportunities for students. So there will be robust opportunities, teaching and learning, as well as OSS are looking at putting together a menu of opportunities that will be shared out to families so that we can make sure that those targeted supports are out there for our variety of various students. So that's what those types of things are what we're talking about. But in terms of the universal summer, so this is again an opportunity for us to get more explicit and targeted with our language, while also making sure that we don't create other issues that we then have to problem solve around. But yes, you're exactly right in terms of our summer programming offerings. You heard the conversation. I believe some of the questions were asked around the socio-emotional curricula. You heard the investment in those resources that have been beneficial. So we are looking to maintain those, and then also what other opportunities may be out there. We want to make sure that we are considering those parts as well. So to, again, make those guidelines broad enough that we can pick up other opportunities as they present themselves without limiting ourselves there too.
Okay, Stephen and then Helen.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks for this, Dr. Guillory. 2 questions. One, again, on number 4, is there a reason that we're focusing on the availability of resources for SEL? Because you could really say resources for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Is there any reason why we're highlighting a budget intention rather than just saying we want to continue to support post-pandemic emotional and academic needs?
I mean, it won't lose any value, certainly, but those are added words that they're redundant in there. That's
it wasn't a criticism. I was just wondering if there was like a specific budget intention that you were trying to highlight there. And my other comment was that I guess I still am a little confused about the value of having examples. And my concern about that is that people might feel that their particular examples are, if they're not reflected, they may think that they're not prioritized. If these are these priorities, or are they merely examples?
So these, what these get called out for, or these are things that we're saying, these are some of the big rocks that we must move. We're still going to do other things, but these are the ones that we must move in 23.
And then I don't think it would be harmful to say that these are likely priorities. Examples just feels like
I see. Okay.
Okay, but those are minor comments. Thank you.
Helen, and then Susan.
Yeah, I guess, thank you for this, but I would wonder if we couldn't get a presentation sooner rather than later on what the thinking is about the summer programs, where, and that could maybe be at curriculum, possibly, if that's the appropriate place to do it, and then just a short report here, or doing it here. But I certainly would like to understand the change and what it is you're planning for this summer, because I think, the learning loss that many kids have experienced is, worrisome, and we need to and my sense is that having 2 full summers of help will help. It's as simple as that. But so if that would be possible, I'd appreciate that.
Sounds good. Nope, it's definitely on our radar. We're working toward that. So we actually discussed that at our senior cabinet meeting Tuesday.
Yeah, no, but I think it, like last year when it was presented to us, I think that was really good. And if we could do that again this year, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Susan.
Yeah, no, so first of all, thank you for this. This is never an easy task, and there's sort of a little bit of danger to wordsmithing it too early in the process before we get budget numbers. That said, just one caution, given your answer to Stephen, which I thought was a very good question and a good answer. Given that we do have a fair amount of one-time monies that Sam and Mariah and you and the senior staff are working so hard on, I do wonder what happens if we put certain rocks in the bucket first and start protecting jobs without knowing what the implication is for everything else. So I just need to state that as a worry. So we didn't say it this way, but I'll use this as a little bit of a hyperbole. But let's say we said we're not going to touch the adjustment counselors, many of whom are new hires to the district. And what that means is that some number of educators we will no longer have room for, who have been around for a long time, who are doing other quite important things. There's just a little bit of a danger to the extent that these are become sacred cows or become seen as sacred cows in a budget process that's this challenging with this much one-time money. So it's more of just a caution than anything else. I don't feel the need to wordsmith this unless we are truly saying that these are inviolable, in which case we probably should have a little bit more context about what that might mean for everything else. But to the extent that they're priorities, I think we can all agree mental health is absolutely critical and is a priority. It's just kind of how much weight we're putting on that. So we understand what we're voting for, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, other thoughts? I think we are going to try and vote this. Is that right, Linus? Would like a vote on this?
That would be helpful for us with the feedback that we've been given.
Okay. Would someone like to move the acceptance of these guidelines? Thank you, David. Someone want to second it? Thank you, Andy. Any other conversation before we take a vote? Again, thank you to Mariah and all who participate in this. So with that, we'll go ahead. Helen?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay. So we have our guidelines. Again, they're not in stone, they're guidelines. So that should help us. David, are you ready to talk about the policy around adequacy standards?
Yes, so at the last time that we had this discussion, there were some questions around potential costs that were involved. It appeared that many of us felt that this is more aspirational rather than a hard requirement to ensure that we change facilities in a certain manner. It's more about ensuring that we are thinking about facilities from these different perspectives that are mentioned in the policy. So if there are not any more questions regarding it, I would like to move that we approve this policy, because I think it's important that we take a more holistic, comprehensive approach to our discussions around capital needs and whether our buildings are serving the interests of all of our students and staff.
Do we have a second to the motion? Thank you, Stephen. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts before we vote?
I just have a quick question. David, this is probably very obvious, but are we still looking to promote a process by which the school committee is informed perhaps more thoroughly or more dynamically about CIP priorities? Remember in our last conversation on this, we felt like we didn't have enough information to analyze CIP recommendations. This policy doesn't cover that. Am I correct?
Right. This policy does not cover that, but that's certainly a worthwhile discussion that we ought to have. That's probably something that would come up mainly at the capital subcommittee. And then as particular priorities are identified, it would move up to the full committee. But this policy is basically just stating that we're going to look at the needs of our students and our staff in a more comprehensive manner through different perspectives.
Thanks, David.
Helen, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, Stephen, in answer to your question, on Tuesday, the 14th of December, we will be discussing the CIP and the mini CIP and the monies that we do for maintenance. So you may want to attend that.
Thanks, Helen.
Because that will be a more thorough look at all of these items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions about this motion, accepting the policy? Okay, we'll take a vote then. Jennifer?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. Okay, thank you. We've actually covered all that we needed to cover tonight. We have new business, and then I do not believe we have need for an executive session. Helen, do we need one?
This is for new business.
Okay, just hold on a second. So anyway, think about that for a moment. We'll do new business and then we'll think about the executive session, which I don't believe we have a need for, but we'll see. Helen, new business.
Yeah, so I just wanted to inform the committee that today MSBA had an all-day event on sustainability in new school buildings, and we were well represented by Sam Rippon and Matt Gillis, who spoke at the event, along with, I'd say about at least 10 to 12 other communities who are doing building projects. I was surprised by the number of communities that are doing building projects on their own dime, just as we have. And a number of them had 3 building projects going on at once. It was just a good event, and I don't know if there's a recording of it. It was a long event. It was from 9 until 3. But there was some good information that was gotten, and I think it'll serve us well. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Sam.
Thank you for the opening there, Helen. I agree. A great group of people that are doing. I'm proud to be a part of the public schools of Brookline with the seat at the table, because Brookline is a leader in this regard, and we have a good story to tell. And I know some of my colleagues have reached out to me post a presentation that are interested in what Brookline is doing and wanted to get more information based on what was said at the meeting. Thank the community for allowing these things to occur, because they don't get to occur in many other places right now.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Helen. Helen, did you attend all day too?
Most of it.
Okay.
I listened to. I found it actually quite interesting. They had a wide variety of schools, from small rural to folk tech to urban and suburban. So it just ran the gamut of everybody.
Okay. Thank you. You think there'll be a report about it, or?
Well, so on Monday, I guess I'll continue then. On Monday, the Pierce School Building Committee is meeting, and we will be talking about, I said this one, both safe routes to school, a transportation RFP that's going to be going out with regards to Pierce in terms of School Street and all the other streets around, parking, etc. We'll be talking about that. And there was one other, what you were just saying something, I just lost it. That was important. Oh, and there'll be a review of what went on at this meeting. That's what led me to this at the school building committee, with more detail, I'm sure.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I don't believe there's a reason to have executive session tonight. We hopefully will have something on the 16th, unless I see otherwise. Okay, no, okay. So actually, we're ending a little early tonight. Just remember that on the 16th when we go a little longer. So, they go in waves. Dr. Guillory, do you have a last word for us at all?
Oh, just so glad to be back after the Thanksgiving holiday. We jumped back with both feet in, and our school leaders, our educators, our staff are all doing exciting work around the school. So it's around the district. So it's great to see all of this energy back, and folks are digging deep to push for the next big break. So we'll continue supporting. And again, thank you, school committee, as well as the Brookline community for your continued support and advocacy for our schools.
Thank you so much. Just a reminder to the school committee members, we're going to take up the suggestions around our communication strategies and our norms for responding to emails. So just take a look at that. Send some of that to Stephen and Mariah, right, Stephen, for input? Okay, so we'll see how far we get with that. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. You still have it ahead of you, and have a good night.
Night.
Good night. Bye.